Well, it's better to burn the methane to have it go into the atmosphere. You get no benefit from it if it just goes in the atmosphere, and it's a very bad greenhouse gas. So it's actually better to burn it than to have it just go straight into the atmosphere. At least you get some benefit from it. So a lot of, countries are concentrating on recovery from methane from tips, rubbish tips and so forth. We do some of it here at the sewage farm at Werribee. We recover methane. Some car plants and so forth have been powered by methane recovered from refuse dumps. And so I think this is all part of the green technological type approach. Geoengineering, in the sense of climate science, has got some a little bit crazy things like, putting up some sort of toxic screen in the atmosphere to keep the sun away or something. I mean, it sometimes gets a little bit mad, but it's certainly something that should be explored and thought about, because it seems that we're not going to cut emissions at anything like the rate we need to. And so we need to think about solutions that go beyond that.
Another geoengineering prospect, which I think is interesting, is having ships in the ocean blasting water into the sky so as to create enough clouds.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's I worry about these types of solutions, really. I mean, you don't know what the consequences of that will be. And the climate science models actually factor in, or some of them do. The climate scientists write a whole lot of different models, and a lot of them factor in a high atmospheric vapor, or some of them do, to see its mitigating effect and so forth. And I think the conclusion is still that the whole thing warms progressively. So, what worries me about those sort of solutions is it focuses attention away from actually having to do something now. And I think it can appeal to politicians because it's in the future. We don't have to do it, sort of thing. So I'm a bit dubious. We need to focus on the things we can do now, or we can do soon, or that we can logically develop to do soon. And so I think solutions like getting very cheap solar energy is fantastic. That's great. But there's a lot of other things that need to go with that. You need to firstly get the energy producers are tending to kick back against solar because it disturbs their economic and charging model. And so we need to work out much better economic and negotiate much better solutions at that sort of level, not just at the level of the actual science, but at the level of how the industry actually makes this work and makes it work as a for-profit industry, because that's what they're interested in. And because they're totally opposed to sort of local solar that takes people off the grid, because that destroys their whole economic model. And it's probably not economic anyway. It's much more economic to generate solar at the moment, I think, from, say, solar furnaces and do it on a large scale. But you have to have your grid organised to handle that, and you have to have some backup system. So whether you can use your solar electricity to make hydrogen, for instance, you can use it to pump water uphill, you can use it to heat hot salt. I mean, there are various ways of doing it, but it needs investment, and it needs a buy-in from the actual entity side, and it probably needs financial help from the public sector. Well, we have a history of doing that. I mean, human beings, we're very good at fight and flight in a very short term. I mean, we can do things very short term. If you've got a war situation, you'll get massive national sacrifice and you get people focusing on the issue. The trouble is this is a long, slow developing process. But you could get into that situation and you're trying to find very short-term solutions. So you want to be ready for that. I'd look particularly at defense departments. If you look at the US Defense Department, they're wargaming what the effects of climate change will be. I don't know whether our defence department's doing it, but they should be. What we need is actual war games saying, what will happen if this happens? What's going to happen if these Pacific countries, or if, say, Indonesia starts to get heavy flooding? What happens? Can you really retain Australia as an isolated country if other countries are drowning around you? What happens when Bangladesh starts to flood in a big way because it's extremely low-lying? What happens when instead of getting a boat full of 50 people or 70 people, you get a boat full of 1,000 people? I mean, an ocean liner running up on your coast in Western Australia. I mean, you need to be thinking in these terms. Fortress Australia, I think, is not going to work. It's makes no sense. I mean, Bill Clinton said that some years back and pointed out that whatever you do now, the problems in the future are just going to be massively worse. How are we going to relocate all these Pacific Islanders who are going to be displaced?